Hello and welcome to Original Soundchat, where video game music is a work of art. On each episode, it's our goal to help you learn about two soundtracks from the world of games, as well as the people, stories, and critical tracks behind them. My name is DeVader.
And I'm Peter Spezia. We're brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and Rhymes with Asia. It's time to appreciate great OSTs and the games they come from without getting too bogged down in music theory. Up first for our two games this week is Hideo Kojima's Last Stand with Konami, and the stealth action series that he is most famous for, 2015's Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain.
After that, it's 2001's Pokémon Crystal, the special edition of Pokémon's second generation that personally got me started with the franchise.
Hey, so a bit of a personal connection. Got the Pikachu shirt going on. It's a Pokemon kind of day.
I have a Cerulean Gym shirt somewhere, but it's dirty and in my hamper, I guess. So this My Hero Academia shirt's the best I can do.
Cerulean would have still applied in Pokemon Crystal.
Mm-hmm.
The theme between the two games this week, I think Gems is pretty fair. I mean, Pokemon Crystal, right? Crystal there, but Diamond Dogs. It's kind of a big deal.
I think there's also an argument to be made for sequels that added a lot in comparison to the games before them.
Wow. Yeah, that's fair. Boy, is there a lot in terms of gameplay elements in both of these games. You're absolutely right. No follow-up headlines this week. Well, if anything, it's a news bit for me. As of release here, I am 32 years old.
Yeah.
I am still 31 while recording this, so I'll put it that way. Busy work travel and birthday things going on. So, no headlines to talk about this week. Let's go right into talking about Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. Now, we have talked about Metal Gear Solid before with 2001's Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty. We talked about that on a previous episode. Since that game, though, there was 2004's Metal Gear Solid 3: Snake Eater. There was 2008's Metal Gear Solid 4: Guns of the Patriots. There was 2010's Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. And that's if you're counting the main installments of the Metal Gear Solid series. And all of these were finished and released according to Hideo Kojima's plan. Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain was released worldwide on September 1st, 2015 for PS4, Xbox One, PC, PlayStation 3, and Xbox 360. Yes, that's right, even a couple years into the next generation, still releasing for those older consoles. Metal Gear Solid 5 developed by Kojima Productions and published by Konami. What is Metal Gear Solid 5, or it looks like Metal Gear Solid V? It's a third-person, open-world, stealth action game. Now, players are assigned missions on the game's world map, and they can use a variety of strategies and tactics to accomplish these tasks. Kojima and crew, they give the players a lot to do, and it's your choice on how to accomplish them. They give you binoculars so that you can kind of scope out the area. Automatically enemies are marked for you, so you kind of know where they are, how to best avoid them, plot your course of action the best. Now, traditionally in Metal Gear Solid games, non-lethal means are encouraged for a better mission score at the end of the chapter. But obviously that's not the only way. You can go in guns blazing, kill everybody, but you just won't get a better score if that's something that matters to you. Something that is especially fun, carried over from Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker into Metal Gear Solid 5, is the idea of the Fulton surface-to-air system, where essentially players can attach parachutes to anything that's vulnerable in the world to lift them up to the sky and take them back to a growing mother base that the player, the base of the operations is really out of. So
it's so stupid. It's my favorite thing ever.
It is one of the best parts about this game. It could be a sleeping enemy. Oh, they have really good stats. They would really help out this part of mother base. Oh, get them parachute up away. Whoa!
You work for me now. Into the sky with you.
Is this random sheep? Would that be good to take back to Mother Base? Bah! A tank? I could take back a tank and sell it for credits. Buy tank. Tank goes up to the sky. It is the greatest. And so Metal Gear Solid 5's gameplay is this balance between like being sneaky, trying to accomplish these missions, but also managing personnel and assets for growing this base back home, for developing new weapons and capabilities. It's this delicate, amazing balance. It's so, so fun. The plot of the game involves coming off of the last game, which is essentially like a prequel prologue, essentially. After a surprise attack destroyed the original Mother Base that you built up during Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. Now, this Mother Base held your group, this mercenary group called Militaires Sans Frontières. And you, as Big Boss, you've fallen into a coma after this surprise attack. Now, when Big Boss finally wakes up in a hospital in Cyprus in the year 1984, he finds himself under attack by the same Cypher forces that tried to kill him 9 years ago. So in this game, Cypher is the enemy. It goes back to Metal Gear Solid 3. There's Zero, there's the Patriots, all involved in this Cypher overarching evil force. But Big Boss has been in a coma for 9 years, wakes up after he escapes the hospital with the help of a bandaged man named Ishmael. Big Boss becomes reacquainted with his rival Ocelot and his closest friend Kaz Miller. And together they establish this new military group, Diamond Dogs, and then they learn of a Cypher operation to develop a new bipedal nuclear weapons-equipped tank called Metal Gear Sahelanthropus. Now, can Big Boss stop this new Metal Gear, which is controlled by the enigmatic Skullface and his Skull Soldiers? What is the deal with this mute, hardly clothed sniper named Quiet? And how do characters like Eli Tretyrevenok and others tie into this larger Metal Gear Solid canon? So, Joe, here's where I'll ask you, what are your experiences with Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain?
It's one of the things that sold me a PS4. I played this game. I didn't quite play. I sort of played it at launch. It was a weird situation where Ben had a PS4 and I did not.
Your roommate, yeah.
When Metal Gear Solid 5 came out, yes. And he bought the game at launch, and I had to play on his PS4, which meant that I could not be playing while he was playing. But we both played around the same time. I beat the game before him somehow. I don't remember how, but that did happen. It is a game that I have the weirdest conflicting feelings on. Because gameplay-wise, it is one of the best open world games I've ever played in my entire life.
Yes, absolutely.
Metal Gear wise, it is my least favorite game in the franchise. So it's this weird I have no other game that I feel like this about. Anywhere in the world where it's like, oh man, I love playing this game. I wish it was something else.
Yeah, I feel like I'm right there with you because, I love this game dearly. It is my favorite game from 2015. And so when we're talking about games like, Undertale or Life is Strange. No, for me, like Metal Gear Solid 5 was my personal game of the year, favorite game from 2015. I put in a bunch of time into that game, like upwards of 70 hours, like easily. Great, great game. Flawless gameplay, but as we'll talk about, the story is heavily lacking.
Very, very much.
And there's a variety of reasons for that, but it is definitely the weakest Metal Gear Solid game in terms of that component to it. But the core loop, when we're talking about the fun of Fultoning things and planning your strategies with a variety of assets at your disposal, just flawless. I feel like to start talking about Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, we have to first talk about the Fox engine, because the Fox engine is really what makes that game look so great. It's the reason why they were able to release that game, have it look amazing on these next generation systems, but also still have it run really well on past generations. Like, the Fox engine was this engine that Hideo Kojima and Konami developed over a long period of time. And it was first revealed at E3 2011. And it was this idea, like, trying to do like photorealism, and it's like the next step, and we'll do like Pro Evolution Soccer with this engine, and like this will be our console game engine going forward. At GDC 2012, around in March or so, there was a Development Without Borders campaign that popped up to try to recruit attendees as Big Boss wants you for next MGS. Okay, so trying to get people interested and recruited there, because Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes was revealed later that summer as being a prologue to the next numbered Metal Gear Solid game. And then I'm going to lift this verbatim as a quote from Wikipedia, because I feel like it's the only way to best describe how weird this time was. So bear with me here as I quote. At the Spike Video Game Awards in December 2012, a teaser trailer for a game known as The Phantom Pain was shown, credited to a new Swedish developer known as Moby Dick Studio, and was described as being, quote, 100% gameplay. Allegedly led by Joachim Mogren, the studio's mission statement read that it aimed to deliver an uncompromising, exciting, and touching game experience to people all around the globe. After the presentation, commenters speculated that The Phantom Pain was actually a Metal Gear game, noting the protagonist's resemblance to Big Boss, graphics similar to those produced by the Fox engine, the quote, V has come to at the end of the trailer, and that the title Metal Gear Solid 5, or V, fits in the negative space and the indentation of the Phantom Pain's logo when using the same font. The name Joachim was an anagram of Kojima,
which I did not know until literally just now.
The domain name for the studio's website had only been registered about 2 weeks prior to this announcement, and several people wearing Moby Dick Studio shirts were sitting in a VIP area intended for Konami's staff. Hideo Kojima stated that he was impressed by the trailer and how Mogren was inspired by Metal Gear. So it was a time, to end the quote then, it was a time where The Phantom Pain, Moby Dick Studio, Joachim Mogren would be this bandaged guy with, like, could see his eyes, but he'd appear on game trailers, TV, and a couple segments with, surprise, surprise, Jeff Keighley.
And there were theories that he was he was a person built in the Fox engine, like he was rendered in the Fox engine. Yes. I'm assuming that was not actually the case.
It wasn't, but the Fox engine looked that good at the time, right? There was, Jeff Keighley asked a question at the end of an interview, like, so why does this look a lot like the Fox engine? And Joachim Mogren's like, uncomfortable, and like cuts the interview basically. So there's all this weird meta speculation going on. And then Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain is confirmed at GDC 2013 with a trailer featuring Garbage's Not Your Kind of People. Also, at E3 2013, E3 2014, amazing trailers, just knock out of the park. Like, that's the time where, like, E3 was special to, like, deliver amazing game trailers. But it was also at E3 2013 where the controversy kind of continued, because it was confirmed by Hideo Kojima that the actor Kiefer Sutherland would be providing the voice for Big Boss instead of longtime series veteran David Hayter. And this was controversial because the Japanese voice of Snake was unchanged. And there's always been talk about how Kojima likes movies and Hollywood a whole lot, and he's buddies with Hollywood producer Avi Arad, and they kind of decided, we want someone different who could, emulate and emotions differently and needs to be older. So Kiefer Sutherland. It was a weird announcement. Let's just say that.
People weren't happy. I was not happy. I'm kind of still not happy, honestly.
Yeah. David got a raw deal. Let's put it that way for sure. And then there's Quiet. And Quiet is a character who shows a lot of skin, who is dressed to be sexy, played by the model Stephanie Houston. And there are different quotes like Kojima saying, like, when you really find out what, Quiet's backstory is, you will be ashamed by your words and deeds of how you've been talking about her. And different things like that. I wish Hideo Kojima would just say, look, I like sexy characters. I like the idea of fans dressing up as these sexy characters. At least that would be honest.
Just follow Yoko Taro's example.
Yeah.
When asked why 2B looks like that, he said, 'cause I want her to. 'Cause I like sexy costumes. And everybody loves him.
Yeah.
Just be honest about why.
So yeah, there are weird controversies about this game, but none are bigger than the infamous split between Hideo Kojima and Konami. And I don't have nearly enough time to get into that whole thing. In fact, if that whole idea is like still unfamiliar to you, let's put it this way. It's still one of the greatest stories still yet to be told in gaming journalism. What really happened between Konami and longtime executive vice president, cash cow, mythological figure, Hideo Kojima. Just an irrevocable split. There's still lots to be told about that. All you need to know, though, for the gist of it, is that in March 2015, Konami restructured their company so that Kojima no longer had any leadership role. They stripped his name, a Hideo Kojima game, off of future Metal Gear Solid release covers. They even put out like a legacy collection of all of his past work. No longer a Hideo Kojima game on top of that. People speculate that Konami thought that Kojima was spending too much money to make Metal Gear Solid 5. And through all of this, Kojima had to stay at the company and live out his contract under these ridiculous conditions that Konami had in place through December 2015, a few months after MGS5 was released. So, he and his team shipped the game the best that they could, but it meant that it was an unfinished product.
And if I might point out, this split went so hard and so comically malicious that there are people up until Death Stranding's release that were like, that was all an act. This is a secret Metal Gear game. Those people were stupid, but that still was a sentiment that existed in the world.
Yeah, just because of how Kojima had played us all for a damn fiddle before, right? But no, not this time. There is a fascinating story to be told there. And Metal Gear Solid 5 is an incomplete game because of all that. The story suffers tremendously. It was a story meant to be told in at least 2, possibly 3 large chapters. And honestly, only 1.5 of them are considered possibly complete. It's rough. It ends abruptly and strangely in an unsatisfying manner on game special edition discs. There's animatics of a whole chapter, an episode, a mission that fleshes out a lot of this lore stuff with certain characters, and it would have been great if Kojima could finish the game and not have Konami intervene. And that's not even talking about PT, the playable teaser, about Silent Hills. You could just bring that up for some good angry fun. We don't have time for all of that. If you'd like a great YouTube video to watch, if that kind of stuff fascinates you, it's called, this video is called PT's Hidden Meaning. It's by YouTuber The Great Debate, and great being GRATE, like a cheese grater. The Great Debate. Yeah, PT's Hidden Meaning. It's about half an hour long. Fascinating about different possible speculation of what Kojima's split from Konami must have been like. Just amazing.
I still haven't watched it because I'm already sad. Now I need to get more sad. But I might need to now that Silent Hill news recently came out.
Right. Yeah, no, it may make you very, very sad. I feel like there is maybe some merit to, maybe Konami being a little impatient, though. It was estimated that about over $80 million was spent to develop this game. It was in development for a long time, but honestly, so worth it. Such a good game. It was reviewed very well. Metacritic score of about 95 on Xbox One, 93 on PS4, and 91 on PC. Like we said, the gameplay is masterful.
One of the best playing games I've ever played in my life.
It is so flawless. But yeah, Konami's meddling creates a story that is messy and incomplete and just a whimper of an ending. But I feel like just the attention to detail in the moment-to-moment gameplay is just top-notch throughout. And the Fox engine is incredible.
Didn't they use the Fox engine to make that Snake Eater pachinko machine, actually, now that I think about it?
They sure
I'm pretty
did.
sure they did.
They sure did. Yep. Metal Gear Solid 5 shipped over 6 million copies by the end of December 2015. So at the end of that year, only in a few months, that's pretty great. At the Game Awards 2015, it was the best action-adventure game, and it won Best Score Soundtrack. That was a whole thing where Hideo Kojima could not come to Los Angeles to accept this award for Best Action-Adventure Game because Konami was locking him down, and so Kiefer Sutherland had to accept the award. I mean, that was a whole thing on its own. It also won Game of the Year from several smaller publications.
I remember watching that live, and did the crowd boo?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Oh yeah.
Okay. I can't remember if it was complete silence or if they booed.
Because Jeff Keighley made a statement that he couldn't be there with us tonight, and crowd made it known they were not happy at good old Konami. Like you said, though, I mean, what is the legacy after this game? Well, there was the Hideo Kojima-less Metal Gear Survive that was released by Konami to just a dismal reception in 2018. You're right. The Fox engine is used to create these gorgeous cutscenes from Metal Gear Solid 3 for pachinko machines. But meanwhile, Kojima Productions became an independent studio, picked up by Sony, and they released the PlayStation 4 exclusive game Death Stranding on November 8th, 2019. A game I still have to get to, but honestly, after doing all this research and remembering how much I love Kojima and his amazing nonsense, I'm like, yeah, I have Death Stranding sitting installed on my PS4. I pre-ordered it. I just haven't gotten to it yet. I need to really get on that.
I still need to borrow it from my roommate, but there's so many games I still got to get to. I still got to finish Kakarot.
Oh, man. So many games here in 2020. The music is primarily composed by Ludvig Forssell. And I feel like, when you compose a soundtrack like Metal Gear Solid 5, and you compose a soundtrack like Death Stranding, and you win awards for both soundtracks, there probably should be more about you on the internet. But there really isn't. And I'm shocked. Ludvig Forssell is born in Sweden. He's the current audio director at Kojima Productions. You can find him on Twitter at Ludvig_Forssell. And I'm just going to apologize in advance. This is a rough week for composer research. What the hell? That's it. You're an award-winning composer, and all people can write about you on wikis. I couldn't even find a website for himself with a biography or anything. All people are saying oh yeah, he's the current audio director at Kojima Productions, and he composed Phantom Pain and Death Stranding. Like, you don't have any more about this man?
So basically what we're saying is, Mr. Forssell, if you're watching this, our Twitter accounts are at the end of the video.
We're at Soundchat OST. We would love to talk to you.
Absolutely.
Because Mr. Forssell worked on Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes. He worked on The Phantom Pain. He worked on Death Stranding. And he may have also worked on PT? Maybe?
If he worked on like sound design for PT, then this man is a genius and a master.
I mean, like we gotta talk to him someday, I think. So the soundtrack for Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain is pretty interesting in this regard. It's produced by Harry Gregson Williams, who we talked about on our Metal Gear Solid 2 episode. But he wasn't too busy as far as composing songs. He composed a couple songs for the Ground Zeroes prologue, but nothing really in The Phantom Pain, because Ludvig Forssell was the lead composer. Credits also go to Justin Burnett and Daniel James, though. Forssell said about the soundtrack that the idea was to create a non-tonal, non-chordal, and mostly percussive score, almost devoid of melodies, to give an impression of reality instead of feeling like music superimposed on whatever real situation you would find yourself in playing the game. And I feel like in the moment-to-moment gameplay, like, yeah, that's pretty true. But there are cutscenes that definitely lean into the orchestral bit, and they are amazing. It's fantastic. The score also is important because when it's set in 1984 like this, for an added sense of realism, the game has like an in-game cassette player where the player as Big Boss can collect these different tapes throughout the world that have like different Metal Gear Solid themes, as well as licensed songs from the 80s, from the time period. So I have personally great memories of just blasting songs out of the Pequod helicopter that, when it comes to pick you up at the end of missions. I gotta ask, Joe, what was your main song of choice for blasting out of the Pequod?
So I don't remember for sure, but looking at a list of the songs that are in the game, I'm pretty sure it was either Kids of America or Take On Me. Probably Kids of America because that's the funnier choice. Because I almost bought this game on PC just because you can put custom music on Pequod on PC, so I could do the kids, if you're listening, plug your ears. Ninja Sex Parties, Everybody Shut Up, I have an erection. Because I think that one would fit really well for a jokey song to blast out of that helicopter. I'm pretty sure it was Kids of America.
Mr. President, I have it.
I'm pretty sure that was a plan I had for a while, but I never bought it on PC, and I don't know if I ever will. But like, if I do, better believe that's one of the first things I'm doing.
I mean, this game goes on sale sometimes for like $10. I feel like people can't miss it at that price, honestly. My song of choice, more often than not, was Hall & Oates' Man-Eater.
I think that was Ben's. That's the one Ben put on.
That's a good one. Whoa, here she comes. Watch out, boy, she'll chew you up. Yeah, good stuff there. I will stop there so we don't get flagged, though, honestly. Let's see. The recording for the soundtrack took place in Los Angeles, Nashville, and Santa Barbara. And apparently in July 2015, Rika Muranaka, who is a notable singer from the Metal Gear Solid franchise, she's sung Metal Gear Solid themes like the ending theme in the first Metal Gear Solid game, The Best Is Yet to Come. She apparently told Frag Nation that there were about 30 commissioned songs that were never used, and it's just a continuing aspect of Konami's budget concerns over the Metal Gear Solid 5 project. So even the soundtrack suffered a little bit as a result of this. Even to the point where Ludvig Forssell wanted to create a Diamond Dog Crew rap, but unfortunately did not have time for it. He says it even had finished lyrics.
Oh no, Konami probably owns those lyrics. He wouldn't even be able to, like, make them on his own time. Oh no, we've lost a great piece of art.
I feel like that would have been deliciously amazing, much like when we talked about Call of Duty Modern Warfare and how Sergeant Griggs has his rap at the end that's all about Call of Duty and Infinity Ward. I feel like it'd be on that level. That's a shame. Also important to note that in the special thanks credits of the soundtrack, Joachim Mogren is given special thanks, as is Korean food, and of course, Metal Gear Solid fans and supporters.
So Joachim is an anagram for Kojima. Where does Mogren come from?
I feel like part of that, I didn't mention this, that like the code name for Metal Gear Solid 5 for, I guess, years was Project Ogre. So I wonder if part of that slipped into Mogren a little bit. Just some speculation there, I guess. What does this soundtrack sound like, though? Let's get to the 5 critical tracks. And we'll start with the first song, The Man Who Sold the World. Granted, The Man Who Sold the World, a cover of David Bowie's original song. This one comes from, I believe it's 1982. This is performed by Midge Ure. So Kojima, a big fan of his, got to put it in the game, especially with a cassette tape that says, "From the Man Who Sold the World." And if you go and watch the intro of the game after beating the game, it is interesting to think about how it starts. I'll just put it that way. Because I sat down and like watched the hour of the opening mission, which is just so special. Like it at the time, people were like, is this one of the best intros in video game history? And I don't know about that nowadays, but it still holds up as like a really special tutorial mission.
I think unfortunately something that happens near the end of the game ruined it for me a little bit. But also, it's a really good intro. Yes, I will give it that.
Yeah. And so this song plays literally at the beginning when credits are rolling with, opening credits. So it's the idea that, Big Boss is waking up from his coma in 1984. This song from 1982 is being played in headphones. It's trying to set the time period, essentially. So it's just one of these covers, like a classic song, obviously. So many great covers of The Man Who Sold the World.
Mm-hmm.
But this one really stands out as like, oh, you're getting into something pretty special with this game.
And definitely describes some things.
It sure does. But when we get to the orchestral part of the soundtrack, I think one of the main themes of this game is number 2 on the Critical 5, V Has Come To. This part, especially this clip, is like, I feel like it's Big Boss's theme for this game, essentially. I'm not entirely sure where this plays, but it's like a pretty heroic moment. And it's one of those ones when you listen to the score, it's just like, not only does this sound great, but it's also like immediately recognizable as like, oh, from this soundtrack for sure. And when it has a title of V Has Come To, and all that means in this world, it's a pretty important track to put here.
It's very possible that this is a song that was supposed to have a scene that just ended up on a cassette. Because that did happen to a lot of the songs. There is, I guess, we should probably specify, for a large part of the game, there is no soundtrack.
Yeah.
When you're on the open world, when there's like boss fights or specific moments or cutscenes, whenever the rare case that there is a cutscene, then there's music. But for the most part, when you're just wandering around, there's no music, and you can just put on cassettes and listen to them.
Or it's just, the gorgeous sound design, natural sound around you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I imagine if you can't figure out where this plays, because I can't think of where this would play either, this might just be something that was meant to be used later and never got a chance to be.
Entirely possible, but it sounds great, and it shows Forssell's work on this score for sure. Number 3 on the Critical 5. This is Sahelanthropus Dominion. This one is composed by Justin Burnett, so getting his work in here a little bit. And this is the boss battle against Sahelanthropus. So when it takes place at the end of Chapter 1, it's a little weird than when, Chapter 2 comes along and all that's there. This is a terrifying boss battle, by the way, in case you're curious. Yeah, when this big bipedal robot is just stalking you, and you only have a certain amount of armaments to try to go up against it, you better hide behind some rocks. Make use of your space while this really intense, orchestral, but this grindy electronic sound is really getting it. It's intense. It's real intense.
I think I remember hating this boss fight, though.
I mean,
honestly,
yeah.
I don't remember. I'm pretty sure I absolutely despised this boss fight. That being said, aesthetically, Sahelanthropus is really cool. He breaks everything after that because, canonically, everything after that doesn't make any sense. Why did they regress from this bipedal, literal, it's an Ava. It's an Ava with freaking Metal Gear Rex's head. So it does that, that part kind of breaks it. But yeah, I think terrifying is a good way to describe anything having to do with Sahelanthropus, to be perfectly honest.
And just the track has just so much intensity and magnitude to go along with it. The last 2 songs on the Critical 5 are really important vocal themes that have to be mentioned when talking about the soundtrack to this game. The first of which is the quieter of the 2. Just see what I did there. This is Quiet's theme. This is composed by Akihiro Honda. We talked about him during the Super Smash Bros. Brawl episode. He did the arrangement for the Metal Gear Solid 4 theme in that game. So here he is composing, actually both of these songs, actually. Lyrics by Ludvig Forssell, and vocals by Quiet's actor, Stephanie Houston. She performed this song at the Game Awards for 2015. It was a nice live performance there. It's a beautiful and simple vocal theme, but whether it's the humming of the melody or the actual singing of words, you're introduced to it pretty early on in that tutorial cutscene, and it's a pretty important deal, especially when it comes to quiet speaking and using her words. So I think it's just overall pretty iconic to this game.
I think this is my favorite song in the game.
Wow. Okay.
Just barely eking out the next song on the list. And I think it's just because of how it's a very emotional thing. Like Quiet, the whole thing with how she's dressed is really stupid. But I think that Quiet is overall like a pretty good character in terms of where she goes. And that final scene with Quiet is probably my favorite scene in the game. And one of the few actually like, oh, this is an emotional beat. I'm feeling emotions from the story of Metal Gear now. Wow.
And she is easily the best companion that you can take along with you to help you.
Oh, 100%. She destroys that. She cracks that game wide open.
Yeah. So it's an important song, an important character. But I feel like to round out the critical 5, I would be remiss if I did not mention Sins of the Father. All right, Joe, you got to give me your best whoa-ho.
Okay. Give me a second. Whoa.
Wow. Wow. What a song! I love this song. This is like, I'm not gonna lie, up there, probably top 10 favorite songs in video games in the decade for me. I adore Sins of the Father. This is composed by Akihito Honda once again. Lyrics by Ludvig Forssell. Vocals are by the Queen, Donna Burke of Metal Gear Solid vocal fame. And honestly, for as amazing of a song as it is, used in that E3 2013 trailer, which I feel like it's a conversation for another time of like, what are your favorite game trailers of all time? Like E3 2013, Metal Gear Solid 5, at least in my top 3, easily.
Kojima is one of the best trailer cutters in the entire industry.
And I feel like for a couple years between that trailer and the official soundtrack release, I was dying, looking for different cuts on YouTube. Like, who has the best rendition of this song? Like, clean. I need it. And then when the soundtrack finally dropped, perfect. It was fantastic. But it's used so poorly.
Oh, it sucks so bad the way it's used.
And we talked about this in our Thanksgiving Q&A episode. Like, what song is used the worst in a video game? For me, it's clearly this song. Like, I adore this song. But to have it just play without context when Big Boss and Skullface are staring at each other
in a car for the full song.
I mean, it's unbelievably bad.
It is the most boring use of a fantastic song that I've ever... Like, if you've never played Metal Gear Solid 5 and you don't know what we're talking about, when we say the whole song plays while you sit in a car, we're not exaggerating. That is exactly what happens. In real time, you get in a car with Skullface, the car drives across the map, Skullface has a conversation with you, and by conversation, I mean he says things to you and Big Boss doesn't say a thing.
He monologues, yeah.
And then both of them just go silent and the song plays, and then when it ends, you have arrived where you're supposed to go. It's so bad.
The drop could have been used with such great effect, timed up with the cutscene of "The sins never die." Like, it's so powerful, and it's just they're sitting there in the back, and it's bumps on the road. Okay, and like Donna Burke is singing her heart out. Do something with this. Did that get cut too? Ah, such a shame.
Song's so good. And I get angry every time I'm reminded that that's where it plays in-game. Of all goddamn places.
Apparently, there were 8 different versions of the song that were created for that E3 2013 trailer, just to maybe refine it or different slight variations. They nailed it. I don't know what else to tell you. They absolutely nailed it. Joe, let's talk about songs on the cutting room floor. You have 2. Hit me with them.
So, my first one is Angering Mantis. Song was apparently composed by Justin Burnett. This is the song that plays when Mantis takes control of Sahelanthropus and chases Snake. It's the climax of the showdown with Skullface and the Man on Fire. And I like this song a lot. I like that Mantis is in this game, and it really sucks that his involvement in Phantom Pain essentially amounts to nothing, except that he's there. Psycho Mantis is super cool, and I was very excited to learn more about his backstory, and we just got nothing. He just shows up sometimes. Mm-hmm. He does one thing, and that's it. Yeah. It's so sad.
Yeah, it really is unfortunate, but a good song choice, absolutely.
But not unfortunate. Well, actually, quite unfortunate, but in a different, new way. My second song on the cutting room floor is Beautiful Mirage, The Vision Fades. So, in Metal Gear Solid 5, at a certain point, you can walk into a room and find, what's this? Paz is alive. Paz is a character from Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker, who, spoilers, I'll give you like 10 seconds. This game came out in 2015. It was 5 years ago. Paz dies in Ground Zeroes, like, pretty conclusively dies in Ground Zeroes.
It's part of the whole attack that, ruined Mother Base and put Big Boss in a coma. Like, yeah, that was how that prologue ended.
But then you walk into this room and Paz is alive. She's right there. And Boss is like, what's happening? And she doesn't remember anything that happened at that, like, after a certain point in Peace Walker. And every once in a while, you can just go and I believe you show her things, if I remember correctly. You show her items.
Yeah. It's like these wandering skull soldiers or wandering crew members that are like afflicted with some sort of parasite thing or whatever. And like you have to subdue them. And like, they'll give you some item that you have to take back to her or something. And
she'll start to remember. And this song, as the title might indicate, is the song that plays when it's revealed that she's not alive. She was a hallucination the whole time because Venom Snake is riddled with guilt about what happened to her, and it's his guilt manifesting. And this piece is really emotional. And that side quest is very, very good, I think. I wish they would have done more with it. But yeah, it's probably my favorite side thing in Phantom Pain. And this song is gorgeous and very emotional. I love it.
I would agree. It's definitely one of the ones that struck me the hardest. And it definitely has a lot of Akira Yamaoka vibes. Silent Hill, too. Like, woof. Like, I feel pretty intense about that.
That is a good point. I never actually thought of that, but yeah, this does feel a little bit Silent Hill 2-ish.
Mm-hmm. Maybe a little Fermata and Mystic Air. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
My 2 critical tracks. I will start with OKB0. I don't know. I don't have too much to say about this one. I really like how it sounds, but it's important because OKB0 is like Skullface's compound. So, in that mission where you eventually get to have the Jeep ride, you basically have to have an assault on his compound to get in. And yeah, music's real cool on this one. I feel like it's a good representation of like what some of the intense sort of mission music can be like.
Mm-hmm. It's a shame there's not much of it, but yes.
But it's a good example. And then I feel like on the cutting room floor, I wanted to include another important vocal song. And this one, we'll talk about it. This one is Nuclear. Nuclear is written and performed by Mike Oldfield. This song is used in the E3 2014 trailer for Metal Gear Solid 5, where Big Boss is rubbing the ashes of Diamond Dogs on his face. And it's a pretty interesting scene for them to roll out in 2014, honestly. This song is on the soundtrack for the game, but it's not in the game itself. And so some people speculate that this could have been used possibly in the cut Kingdom of the Flies content. And Kingdom of the Flies references Lord of the Flies, this mission, this episode that was cut from the game that they have these animatics laid out for that involve all these characters that tie into Metal Gear Solid lore. This song could have definitely been used there, and so I feel like people speculate that. I love this song. I love it in that trailer. It's heavily and deeply associated with this game. It's just not in the game, so I can't put it in a critical 5.
That's fair.
So what will I never forget about this game? If we're talking about spoilers, if you really want to, feel free to jump to the next game, because we got to talk about a couple things that just dying to do so. Can we talk about the big twist in this game, please?
I like it, but I wish it was presented better.
The twist being, and skip now, honestly, if you don't want to know. The twist being that you are not Big Boss. You are given the name Venom Snake. You're V. You are the medic on the helicopter that crashed with Paz's explosion. So you are not the legendary Big Boss. You are the quote-unquote Big Boss who is set up to die in the first Metal Gear game, so that in Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, the actual Big Boss can make his plans known and all that. It is a weird retcon, and I feel like there's something maybe deep to be said about Kojima signing off of the franchise and saying you can be the legendary Big Boss, every one of you. I think there's something to be said about that. But you're right, it does kind of set up weird things in the canon. And the whole thing with, Ishmael was really Big Boss and he helped you get out and all that. You both have the voice of Kiefer Sutherland.
Which, so that could have been super cool, right? If maybe not the first time, because that would have given it away immediately. But like the second time, because it makes you, if you're still listening and you haven't played the game, it makes you play the intro again. That's how it gives this twist. That's how it reveals it. It makes you play through the intro again, and that sucks. And if that second time Ishmael was suddenly voiced by DeVader,
holy crap.
that would have been amazing.
One of the best moments in video games, if so.
But still, no, still just Kiefer Sutherland. And just, I think that it's a cool twist that explains something that never needed to be explained.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Any other moments you remember from this game in particular?
It's more, when I think about moments of this game and things I'll never forget, it's more like all of the potential this game had that it just, because it had to come out unfinished, it was just squandered.
Yeah.
Like all the stuff with Liquid Snake, Eli, who would grow up to become Liquid Snake. Like that, they could have done so much more with that. And they were gonna, and we could see some of it. But even the stuff we're shown in that like bonus disc stuff, they still could have done more with that. Mm-hmm. I mentioned already Mantis. They could have done so much more with Mantis. The idea that Volgan is the man on fire.
Yeah.
Like they could have done way more with that. And there is good stuff. Like I think they handle Quiet's character arc super well. Like I said, her exit scene is fantastic.
The playing in the rain scene is a little weird, especially then when
playing in the rain scene is really stupid. But like, no, I'm glad that scene exists specifically for the model swaps.
Yes,
and
Ocelot, or if you get like Kojima and Norman Reedus playing in the rain.
But like speaking of Ocelot, it's like Ocelot is barely utilized. Kaz is barely utilized.
Troy Baker gave a great performance as Ocelot, but there wasn't enough of like the duplicitous double agent stuff going on.
Yeah, it like Ocelot barely did anything in that game. Kaz barely does anything in that game. You have new characters like Code Talker, who they could have done so much cool stuff with. Skullface could have been a great villain, and he barely does anything. Like the twist that Skullface specifically existed, and was there during Operation Snake Eater, just like a few miles behind you. That's super cool. And they never did anything with that. And just, there's so much, that's what I think I'll never forget about Metal Gear Solid 5, is there was so much potential and so much cool stuff they could have done, but whether it was because for time, like all of the story in this game is given through cassette tapes that you just have to put your controller down and listen to. Because I couldn't concentrate on them while playing the game. I'll tell you that much for free.
Yeah.
It's just, it's the biggest, most fun disappointment I've ever played.
Kaz does stuff with burgers.
I guess, yeah, he does.
The chemical
that sure
burger.
is a thing.
The chemical burger.
Not content with having invented Doritos.
And of course, Skullface. Such a lust for revenge. Ooh!
Like he could have been so great. And it just squandered. That's the part that gets me.
Ooh! Just kills me. So to transition to talking about games, we talked about Metal Gear Solid 5 for quite a while. We'd like to talk about a fan remix from OC Remix from YouTube. Got to do Quiet's theme. I tried to find something for Sins of the Father, and I found something that was like a male vocalist version. It's like, oh, okay, all right. And they got to the big moment, and then it was weak. And I'm like, oh, no, we can't do this. So Quiet's theme it is. Everyone's done a cover of Quiet's theme. But I liked the one where the instrumentation was done by Simon Spark, featuring the vocalist Jehan. And I hope you enjoy that. We'll be right back.
When all hope bleeds out, what remains is doubt. Should have left it all for you for tomorrow, as your time draws near.
All right, let's back it up. a bit. And by a bit, I mean 14 years to the year 2001. Actually, technically before that, because my game, Pokemon Crystal, originally released for the Game Boy Color on December 14th, 2000 in Japan. So 15 years, more like. We're heading back in time. The North American release would follow on July 29th, 2001, with an Australian and European release following the same year in September and November, respectively. It is the special edition third game of Pokemon Generation 2, meaning it is effectively an enhanced version of the games Pokemon Gold and Pokemon Silver, which had previously been released in Japan in 1999, with Western releases in 2000 for North America and Australia, and 2001 for Europe. And I'll be straight with you. First of all, a lot of this section is going to be just about Gen 2 in general, because that's just where most of the information is.
Sure.
But because I started with Pokemon Crystal and it's one of my favorite games, this section is about Pokemon Crystal. You can't stop me. I'm not going to explain how Pokemon games work. Half because if you're listening to this, you probably already know. But the other half because this is the third Pokemon game that we have covered.
Yep.
And they all play roughly the same. So if you really want to hear how Pokemon plays and some more detail on that, you can go check out either episode 19, where Peter talks about Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, or episode 42, where Peter, once again, talks about the original Pokemon Red and Blue. And that's where you can go to get some further detail on that.
And now it's Joe's turn to talk about Pokemon.
Finally, my moment to shine. So, Generation 2 takes place in the all-new region of Johto, which is located directly west of the original Kanto region. Unlike Kanto, which is heavily based on the real-life Kanto region of Japan, which is the most urbanized and developed section of the country, it's where Tokyo is located, for instance. Johto is largely based on the Kansai and Tokai regions of Japan, which are more known for an abundance of temples, cultural sites, stuff like that. That is where the cities of Osaka and Kyoto are located. Generation 2 also adds 100 new Pokemon. One of them is Wooper, which means Generation 2 is the only objectively perfect generation of Pokemon. I will not be taking arguments. Thank you for your time.
He's best boy.
The story of Gen 2 takes place 3 years after the conclusion of the first generation games. It is making it the only, pretty much like, it's not the only direct sequels for years until Black and White 2 would come out, years and years later. And those were like a different kind of direct sequel.
Yeah, I mean, across generations, this story continued, as opposed to, 2 Generation 5 games kind of continued the story. Like, it's different, yeah.
Like, every game after this is completely disconnected from the story of the previous generation, pretty much. Team Rocket was defeated 3 years ago by a young boy from Pallet Town and disbanded, causing a new age of peace throughout the world. The player, put in the shoes of a young child from the small town of Newbark, is sent on an errand by the region's Professor Elm. That's right, instead of Oak, we got Elm. Continuing the tradition of, they're all trees. This errand is to go and collect something from his friend Mr. Pokemon, which ends up being an egg, a Pokemon egg. Now, in order to do this errand, the player is given a choice between 3 brand new starters. Once again, it is between a fire, water, or grass type. In this case, the grass type is the Pokemon Chikorita, the fire type is the Pokemon Cyndaquil, and the water type is the Pokemon Totodile. Tell me, which one?
Totodile's my boy.
Yeah! Totodile's the boy. Cyndaquil is a very close second, and I do have a soft spot for Chikorita, but like, it's Totodile.
Feraligatr learns Ice Punch, and he can wreck shop against dragons.
I just like Totodile. I like Feraligatr a lot. Like, I'm a big water type guy, as I believe we've discussed in previous episodes. I think in Red and Blue, my water type thing came up. I don't remember. But yeah, Totodile's my boy as well. Good choice. Once arriving at Mr. Pokemon's house. You are given the egg, and as you exit, you get a call from Professor Elm saying, "Oh no, something's happened." So on your way back to find out, hey, what happened, you encounter a young man who just happens to have another starter? Turns out when you get back to the lab, this man actually broke in and stole that Pokemon. But there's really not much you can do about it at that point other than name your rival at that point. Or if you're what I've heard many children tell the story of, I never had this. Actually, no, I think I did have this issue the first time I played. When you first encounter him, it's like, you've encountered Pokemon trainer, ? So when the policeman asks you what his name was,
Oh no.
some kids, including I think myself,
Oh no.
told the policeman that his name was ...
Oh, because you were such a good law-abiding boy.
This character's canon name is Silver. He is my favorite rival, I think.
Oh my god, yeah.
Because he is... So, like, Blue in Red and Blue is a jerk. But he's kind of just a jerk because he's egotistical. Silver starts as a bad person and then actually has, like, a character arc throughout the game where he becomes a better person. It's weird and cool, and I really like Silver a lot. He's also the last one that is blatantly somebody that does not like you. That is not a thing anymore after this generation. So from there, your journey begins. For the most part, Gen 2 is pretty much the exact same as Gen 1, except there are different locations, the whole region is different, and your goal is to collect 8 gym badges just like before, in order to challenge the Elite Four and become the champion of the Pokemon League. And on your way, you will continue to encounter good old ... several more times, and even wind up in the middle of the return of Team Rocket. Alongside more Pokemon and a new region, Gen 2 also added a ton of new features that are all pretty much commonplace today in Pokemon. For instance, a real-time clock was implemented into the games for the first time, and I remember this being a big deal, because that meant that day and night passed realistically, and certain Pokemon could only be caught at certain times. Some Pokemon could only be caught on certain days.
Mm-hmm.
It was really cool. Or if you were like me and played a lot at night, not as a kid, but nowadays when I go replay it, if you're like me and play a lot at night, it means that Hoot Hoot is basically the only flying type you ever get to catch.
But you also get Ghastly in Bellsprout Tower.
This is true. This is true. Pokemon were given the ability to hold items for the first time, which led to the introduction of new items like the Quick Claw, which had an effect during battle, just a continuous effect just by holding it, or berries, which were a single-use item that a Pokemon could use to heal themselves either of like being low on health or of a status effect, just automatically without wasting a turn. Both of those are huge things now in Pokemon, and they both originated in Gen 2. Also originating in Gen 2, specialized Pokeballs were introduced outside of the regular Pokeball, Great Ball, Ultra Ball, and Master Ball. For example, the Lure Ball works better on Pokemon that live in the water. I believe also in Gen 2, I don't remember the specifics. I really should have looked this up. I'm only remembering it now. Some of them don't work, right?
Oh, yep. Mm-hmm.
The Moon Ball is one I've been told about before, which is supposed to work best on Pokemon that evolve using a Moonstone, but it doesn't. And I don't remember what it's actually set to on accident, but it's something that means that it does not work better on any Pokemon.
Either that or it's a really good capture rate on like one Pokemon specifically, like a Hitmontop or something dumb and random like that. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's really stupid. I love that. It's great. These can be obtained by collecting items called apricorns, which canonically were apparently what people used to catch Pokemon before Pokeballs, and it's knowing this has always kind of made me wish there was a game that took place in like a really old era of Pokemon when they were using apricorns.
Pokemon Zero with Agatha and Oak would be amazing.
It'd be super great.
Gosh. And by the way, it's apricorns according to the anime. I just want people will get mad. People will get mad. It's apricorns.
At me on Twitter. It's apricorns. Fight me. So, shiny Pokemon also originated in Generation 2. If you don't know what a shiny Pokemon means, it means that very, 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 very rarely, sometimes you may encounter a Pokemon that is a different color than usual. That's it. I've only ever caught two. If you don't count the red Gyarados, which I don't.
No, yeah.
I caught a shiny Doduo when replaying Crystal at one point. I was getting my oil changed in a Jiffy Lube, and I ran into it and almost lost my mind in the middle of a lobby in a Jiffy Lube. I did catch it.
I think I caught a shiny coughing once, but I think that's the only one I've legitimately come across with the rare chance.
I used the Horde technique in X and Y to get a shiny Yanma. Those are the only two shinies I've ever encountered in my entire life. They're exceedingly rare, and yet we have friends that have caught so many shinies in their lives, and I don't understand.
Including a YouTube video where a kid's playing Sum 41, and it says, "There it is! There it is! There it is! Shiny Ponyta!" I love that video so much.
Also added in Gen 2, probably the biggest deal of all, is the ability to breed Pokemon. Hence why you got an egg from Mr. Pokemon. It was a big deal that they put in breeding, which in turn introduced the idea of baby Pokemon such as Pichu, Tyrogue, Elekid, Smoochum, Magby, probably at least one more that I'm forgetting.
Togepi,
Igglybuff. Who cares about Igglybuff?
Cleffa.
Togepi is the big one. But this is also a generation in which the special stat, which used to be the one that covered all of being hit by like special type moves, it was split into special attack and special defense, which added more strategy to battles and training, and boy, was it needed. And then I believe when we talked about Diamond and Pearl on the show, they refined that even more, which was still also needed.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
All of these things are key features that continue to be part of the games today, and big parts of the games today. But, most importantly, and the biggest deal of all, Gen 2 added 2 new types to the lineup, being Dark type and Steel type. Dark was especially a big deal because it was added to curb the absolute dominance of Psychic type in the original games, as Dark is super effective against Psychic, and Psychic type attacks do not affect Dark type Pokemon, which meant that finally there was an actual counter to Psychic type Pokemon that isn't Bug, which didn't work in Gen 1 because there's one Bug type move?
And then Ghost types are supposed to be super effective, but when the only ghosts are part poison that are weak to Psychic, like crazy, crazy stuff.
Yeah. Crystal itself added even more, such as the choice to play as a female character for the first time in series history, the character Chris, as well as having the Pokemon animate upon being sent out or encountered. Both huge deals at the time. And the Battle Tower was also a concept that was introduced in Pokemon Crystal, being a bonus area where players could go and have extra hard battles in order to earn prizes. Crystal also added 2 subplots, one featuring the legendary Pokemon Suicune and a man named Eusine, and the other featuring the mythical Pokemon Unknown. And after all of that, now it's finally time for me to ask, what are your experiences with Pokemon Crystal or just Generation 2 in general?
Gen 2 is markedly better than Gen 1 in every single way. Like, hands down. Like, it's not even close.
Unlike Gen 1, you can go back and replay Gen 2 and not go, wow, this aged terribly.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, if we're just talking about straight up generations, Gen 2 is probably my favorite. I do think the best iteration is the Heart Gold Soul Silver remakes in Generation 4, technically in 2010 on DS. Those are the best iterations of these games. But man, Gen 2 was like when, like Generation 1 was like when Pokemon really began taking off, and 2 was like, no, this is staying, and it's a worldwide phenomenon at this point. Love Gen 2. And yeah, Crystal, I mean, I got a Game Boy Color, and I played Pokemon Blue, and I loved that, and I played Pokemon Silver, and I love that. But getting Crystal and seeing those sprites move, that was like a whole new thing. It was fantastic.
I remember for some reason as a kid thinking that it was my Game Boy that was making the sprites animate. So when I borrowed Pokemon Silver from a friend and they didn't animate, I was like, oh, it's the game. I was just a really stupid kid.
You needed a Game Boy Color for Crystal to animate it. Yeah, so
I had a Game Boy Advance, I believe, that I played Crystal on for the most part. I had a Color at some point, but for the most part, most of my playing of Crystal was on an Advance. It is my first Pokemon game. It got me into the series. I have still to this day never actually beaten a Gen 1 Pokemon game. Because I didn't start with them, and like we just said, like they're super hard to go back to. I also have never beaten Leaf Green or Fire Red, but that's just because like I haven't sat down and done it. I will for Smash Pieces soon, so I'm looking forward to that.
Did you do Let's Go?
I don't like Let's Go.
Okay.
I made it to Lieutenant Surge in Let's Go, and just I was bored, like really bored. Anybody that likes Let's Go, I'm not gonna fault you for it. I can definitely see why somebody would like it. I didn't have a good time with it, so not even that one. But Gen 2, and that being said, I like Gen 2 so much that if they announced a Let's Go Johto like tomorrow, that's day one purchase. I probably won't like that game, but if I want to see Johto in 3D.
Oh gosh, yes, yeah.
Johto is my favorite region by far. Alola became a favorite, like it's up there now. But I think, and Galar also I think has become a big one on that list. But Johto is just untouchable for me. I have so many memories of playing this game as a kid. I remember having a Golbat that just wouldn't evolve for some reason. I don't know why. Never got that Crobat. Anytime I've gone back to play Crystal from here on, never had any problem getting a Crobat. But for some reason, I have like memories of this Golbat that just would not evolve. And yeah, I try to replay this game every year. I don't always finish. In fact, I very rarely have time to finish. But it's one that I like to revisit as much as possible. I love this game. So, let's get into the development of Pokemon Generation 2. According to Creatures Incorporated President Tsunekazu Ishihara, Gold and Silver actually began development right after the Japanese release of Red and Green. So, Generation 2 was in development before Pokemon Yellow had even come out. An original planned release date was sometime in 1998 to synchronize with the ending of the anime's first season. This did not go as planned, but more on that later. The games were first publicly shown at Nintendo Space World 1997 in Japan, and were by and far the most popular exhibit at the show, surprising probably nobody that was running that show. This is where they showed off the new features and the new region, but also they had a playable demo. And this demo looked a lot different from what we got in a lot of ways. at the time, it was rumored that 4 ROM images had been leaked out to the public during this event, but nobody could find them. Until 2018, when one of these ROMs leaked onto the internet, and people went hog wild and dug through them hungrily for every scrap of information that we could find. Like, I remember this coming out and it being the most fascinating thing for like a week.
It was a moment in the Pokemon world, yes.
People found different music, a way larger map than even the final game had, and 100 unused or changed Pokemon designs. So, just to very quickly get into it, because I cannot talk about the history of the development of Generation 2 without talking about the crazy stuff in this, especially in regards to the Pokemon. Every starter had a completely different design, except for Chikorita and Meganium, who remained identical to what we got in the final product. Everybody else was completely different, including Bayleaf, which is bizarre. There were unused baby forms for Mr. Mime, Grimer, Goldeen, Doduo, Meowth, Vulpix, Tangela, Paris, Ponyta, and Growlithe. Of those, only Mr. Mime would end up getting a baby form later in the series in the form of Mime Jr. Also, I figure I have to point out that the baby Paris, its name in-game is Para, so it would have gone Para, Paris, Parasect. I like that a lot. There were unused evolutions for Ditto, Tangela, Farfetch'd, Lickitung, Pinsir, a grass-type evolution for Eevee, Quillfish, and an alternate evolution for Weepinbell outside of Victory Bell on this demo. Tangela, Lickitung, and Eevee would receive these evolved forms in Gen 4, different ones, not the ones in this game, but in the form of Tangrowth, Licky, and Leafeon. Meanwhile, Farfetch'd, just last year, would receive a Galarian form in Generation 8 that evolves into a new Pokemon called Sirfetch'd. So eventually those did get evolved forms, but not all of them. Ditto never got an evolved form. If you remember that sprite, it's like a metal Ditto. It's really weird.
Mm-hmm.
And then Pinsir also never got an evolution. Neither did Quillfish. Weepinbell never got that alternate evolution.
But, Gloom did with Blossom, so maybe they're trying to pair it similarly.
Maybe. Outside of that, there are 15 Pokemon that were just cut entirely. A lot of them look super cool, and I kind of wish they had come into the game for whatever reason. One day, I hope that somebody comes out and is like, yeah, this is what these all were. This was the reasoning behind them. This is why this got cut. Like, I'd love that. That would be the greatest. I'd buy a book about the development of these games, to be perfectly honest. Certain designs of existing Pokemon were also wildly different, such as Girafarig legit being a symmetrical double-headed giraffe. Pichu is a lot chubbier and looks a lot closer to Gen 1 Pikachu than what we ended up getting. Porygon 2 is unrecognizable. It's like a weird lion thing. It's bizarre. And Remoraid and Octillery are designed to look closer to a gun and a tank, which they probably should have kept those designs because that makes them evolving into each other make a lot more sense.
But also kids.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense why they changed it, but maybe they could have figured out a way to still make the evolution make a little bit more sense than it ended up making. I don't know. Like, legit, this demo is super interesting and fascinating, and you should absolutely go look into it if you have any interest in Pokemon. But I don't have time to get into all of it. At the very least, you should go look at the unused Pokemon sprites because they're really they're the most interesting part, I think, by far. Anyways, we mentioned that originally this game was meant to come out in 98, and boy, that did not happen, because as development issues cropped up and Game Freak found themselves sidetracked with the development of the game Pokemon Stadium for the Nintendo 64 alongside Nintendo and HAL Laboratory, the game ended up needing to be delayed. Famously, this caused the anime to have to do an entire filler arc, taking place in a new anime-exclusive area of the world called the Orange Islands, while they waited for the new games to be completed, and then that arc was then dubbed and aired while they waited for the new games to be translated and brought over to English-speaking countries.
And what happened in the Orange Islands? They introduced something called the GS Ball. Whoops.
Whoops for two reasons. One being that it kind of just got cut out of the anime, and the other being something we'll get into in a second. The original release window for Pokemon Gold and Silver ended up being given to Pokemon Yellow to ensure that there was still a title that came out. According to Shigeki Morimoto, a programmer on the project, the main reason the games took so long was because the programming team was made up of a scant 4 people. And eventually, Satoru Iwata, future CEO of Nintendo and at the time working for HAL Laboratory, would have to step in and help them compress the graphics code, which he did so well that they were able to include almost all of the Kanto region, minus like the Viridian Forest got super watered down and Mount Moon got incredibly watered down. But they were able to put in most of the region as a bonus post-credits adventure, still one of the best post-credits anything the series has ever had.
Everyone tries to strive and point to it as an example that you can do 2 regions in Gen 2. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's super cool. And as a kid, I lost my mind. Another big thing in Gen 2 was the legendary Pokemon Celebi, who, much like Mew before it, was a Pokemon only available through visiting a Nintendo promotional event, or, in Celebi's case, through the use of a gadget called the Mobile System GB, an adapter that allowed you to play Game Boy games on your mobile device. I didn't know that's what it was. I thought it was just a hookup for a Game Boy. This add-on gave you access to the item, the GS Ball, which allowed you to summon and catch Celebi. As neither of these things ever came to America, Celebi became yet another mythical creature for young fans, much like Mew. Because it could only be obtained through cheating, we never got any official method of getting Celebi. I believe, if I remember correctly, they have said in interviews like there were plans to like distribute Celebi in America. They just never happened. So Nintendo knew that this game was going to sell hot like hotcakes, and its first production was set to ship 3 million copies just for Japan, as their prediction was that in Japan alone, this game would sell 8 million copies. Again, just in Japan. That 3 million was later cut in half due to an earthquake in Taiwan, which Nintendo claimed had damaged their cartridge manufacturing facilities, but people would theorize at the time that this was actually a sneaky attempt at Nintendo to make an excuse to create an artificial scarcity in order to keep demand high. And boy, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Got that right.
How familiar does that sound to anybody that tried to buy a Wii or any amiibo, or the list goes on and on? That's never the case, guys. Nintendo's just bad at planning, or something happens. It's always that. Upon release, though, as expected, the games were well received by critics and sold like crazy. By April of 2000, 6.5 million copies had been sold in Japan, with Silver selling around 100,000 copies more than Gold. And within a week in America, they had taken the record of fastest selling game of all time, selling a combined 1.4 million copies in 1 week in 2001.
Wow.
As of 2010, the recorded sales of Gold and Silver had hit 23 million copies lifetime. That's just back in 2010. It's probably higher now, because in 2009, the games would receive enhanced remakes that were mentioned earlier in the show, titled Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver. They feature new graphics, more modern mechanics, and the additions originally made for Crystal built into the games. And those, I think, are still my favorite Pokemon games of all time, just in general.
I think they're the best Pokemon games ever made. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. Pokemon Gold and Silver were also re-released worldwide on the 3DS Virtual Console on September 22nd, 2017, with Crystal following on January 26th, 2018. Now, of course, the soundtrack of this game was done by 3 individuals, of course, 2 of them being 2 composers we've already talked about, being Go Ichinose, who we talked about for his work in Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, and Junichi Masuda, who we talked about for his work on Pokemon Red and Blue. So we're going to go for the third person on this episode, being Morikazu Aoki. There's nothing on him. There's nothing on this man anywhere on the internet. There's not a birthday. I couldn't find a birthplace. I can't even find where he works now, because at some point I did find that he did leave Game Freak and began working at the now defunct Alpha Dream, which shut down last year. So I don't know what he's doing. Like Peter said, sorry guys, this is a rough week for composer research. In terms of discography, on Pokemon, in terms of the Pokemon series, he did Gold, Silver, and Crystal. And he also worked on Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. According to VGMD, he is listed on the credits for some of the later games, but they also don't list the other thing he's known for having worked on, being the Mario and Luigi series, because like I said, he went to Alpha Dream at some point, where he worked on the soundtrack for Mario and Luigi Partners in Time, Bowser's Inside Story, and its remake, Superstar Saga plus Bowser's Minions, and apparently he did work on Dream Team, but not as a composer. He worked as a battle programmer. Just on that one, though, which is very weird. So that's all I can find on the man. Like I said, this game was also worked on by Masuda and Go Ichinose. Apparently, Masuda did all of his composing for this game on a Commodore Amiga PC, which was then converted into a MIDI file, which was then converted into the Game Boy Color sound format. So that was a 3-step conversion process for getting music into the game from where Masuda was working on it, which seems like a bit much, but I don't know what the conditions were back then, so what do I know?
And I feel like he did that for Red and Blue too. If we didn't mention that during Red and Blue, apologies, but that does sound familiar. Yeah,
probably. So in terms of the 5 critical tracks, I feel it's important to start with the fact that, hey, you remember in Red and Blue when gym leaders had their own battle theme and the champion had his own battle theme, but outside of that, everybody just used the same trainer battle theme? Not the case in Generation 2. Everybody has their own, like, trainers have their own battle theme. In fact, trainers in Johto have a different battle theme than trainers in Kanto. Gym leaders have their own battle theme. Team Rocket has their own battle theme. And, most importantly for this critical track, our first critical track is the rival battle theme. This song was composed by Junichi Masuda, and yeah, your rival gets his own battle theme. What a novel idea. I mean, he's a special trainer and everything. He should. And I think that to match the fact that he's way more intense than Blue, though still a jerk, just, you know, in a different way, and to match that, his battle theme is super intense. And I think one of the, not the most impressive, because boy, we'll get to that, but one of the most impressive special battle themes in the game. Because, like, this song really drives home. You're not battling this dude to have fun. You're battling him to show him the error of his ways. Show him he's being a jerk. And I love this battle theme. I think it's great.
Especially when you look at like speed runs for this game. The second battle in Azalea Town, when you approach the Ilex Forest, like that's one of the big difficulty checks in the game. Before the whole Whitney, Miltank, blah, 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 blah. The second rival battle is one of the big checks. So, yeah, especially if you pick Totodile and you're up against a Bayleaf that knows like synthesis and things like that. Yeah, it's a good theme. And yeah, finally someone like the rival can have their own battle theme. Something that, again, that would continue on past Gen 2.
And speaking of difficulty checks and Whitney and her Miltank, that damn Miltank, and its stupid rollout, critical track number 2 is Goldenrod City. This song composed by Go Ichinose. This song just feels really nice. It's a nice day out on the town. It's a song that you can play while you're just having a nice leisurely day, walking out on the street, talking to your friends and your fellow Goldenrodders. And Goldenrod has honestly always been a city that is close to my heart. I think if I could live in any city in the Pokemon world, it would either be here or Olivine. And I think Goldenrod just barely ekes Olivine out on that list. And I don't know. This song is probably a big part of it. It feels really carefree, but not too carefree. Because, I mean, after all, this is a bustling big city. It's the biggest city in Johto.
Yeah, it's a big one. And yeah, you get the bike here. You have the mart, the big shop. It's good to have it earlier as opposed to waiting until Celadon for the big mart in Gen 1.
It's also right outside of the daycare. You get like a very special key item here. It's where the radio tower is. It's a very, very important town to the game. I think there's only one other town that's more important, if not equally important.
You also have the long stretch from the daycare that you can bike up and down to rack up your steps. So that's perfect.
Yeah. Goldenrod's just a great city. I would love to live there. But speaking of a thing you get in Goldenrod, I do want to give a bonus shout out. I didn't want to make it its own separate item on the Critical 5 because it is just, at the end of the day, a remix of Goldenrod City. But I want to give a shout out to the bicycle theme. Which, weirdly enough, was done by Junichi Masuda, not Go Ichinose. That's weird. But I think this is kind of sort of my favorite song in the game. Weirdly enough, I love this song. I used to like get on the bike and just let this play for a while when I was a kid. And speaking of songs that I just left on and let play as a kid, and wasted a lot of battery, probably. Critical track number 3 is Rocket Radio Tower Takeover. Once again, composed by Go Ichinose. At a certain point in the story, Team Rocket takes over the radio tower in Goldenrod City, and you have to stop them. And I think this song is overlooked a lot. But it's so catchy, though.
Oh, it's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
To me, this is the song that, this is what Team Rocket sounds like. Like, even more so than the anime with the dun 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 dun. Like, that's a close second, but this is the one for me. The only bad part is that once you beat the radio tower section, you never hear this song again.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no way to rehear it. So this is another one, like I said, where I used to just like walk into the radio tower and just turn my Game Boy's volume all the way up and set it down and just listen to it. God, I wasted so many AA batteries doing this.
It's such a special theme. And you're right. Like, yeah, when you look at the anime and what Team Rocket themes are, even hearing the rendition of this song done in the anime is just chef's kiss. It's so good.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, people overlook this song all the time. I never hear people talk about this song. Except for when it plays and people go, oh, right, that song.
I mean, that initial alert just gets you on edge with dun 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 dun. Yeah, it's, oh my gosh, amazing.
Super good. And speaking of super good, critical track number 4 is Wild Pokemon Battle, Kanto. Once again, composed by Go Ichinose, I cannot stress enough my sigh of relief that back then and today escapes my lips when I get my first wild encounter after taking my first steps into Kanto. I don't know what it is about Johto's wild Pokemon battle theme, but I get sick of it so fast. I have no idea. This doesn't happen with any other wild Pokemon theme in any of the games. But Johto, I just get tired of very quickly. And then you get to Kanto and it's like, yeah. And like, it helps that it's just such a fun, energetic piece. And it's just such a breath of fresh air. Like, seriously, it's so therapeutic almost to hear this song for the first time. And it also just drives home that, no, you are in a different region now.
And there's also enough done to it when you compare it to the original Wild Pokemon battle theme from Red and Blue. There's enough done to it that it sounds different, but no, enough of the memorable cues are still like, they're still there. There's a little bit of nostalgia, but it sounds new and like with a new sound palette.
Which they do the same with the trainer battle theme in Kanto. There's enough there that it does sound like the original, but different. And it's just, I really, really like that. For most of the songs in Kanto, when you go there in Gen 2, it's kind of like that. And they're all good except for Lavender Town. And of course, the final song on the Critical 5, the most important of them all. We've mentioned this theme in other episodes. It's so good. Battle Champion. Composed by Junichi Masuda. In my opinion, this is the best champion battle theme in the series, bar none. Nothing touches it, in my opinion. Not even official or unofficial remixes of this song touch the original, in my opinion. This song lives and dies in 8-bit. And like, just, especially that opening though.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the slow build up, the dun, 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 da, da, da. Because sometimes true tension, it's not in how many instruments are there. It's not in the presence of the instruments, but the absence. Because every single other battle theme in the entire game starts out with just this cacophony of in your face, no, the battle starts now. But this one's just like, oh, it just got real. Like, fighting Lance to this theme is pretty cool. But when you get up to the top of Mount Silver and you find Red, the protagonist of the original Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow, standing up there, and then you're battling the original protagonist, this song is so incredible and so memorable. Hot damn, I love this song.
One of gaming's best moments as a young kid. Like, that's when like anything was possible in games. I will raise the counterpoint though that with battles, Generation 4 had a battle theme where you take on Arceus, and it's a weird start to that one because yeah, you're right. Usually most battles just like whatever. But the battle with Arceus kind of shocks you a little bit because it's just like burn up, like you're doing in drums, and it's like I think they're trying for the same sort of thing, but it's the dissonance of the notes of encountering the god of Pokemon that it's not the same. You're right. I think you're right in saying that it's not a hot take at all to say that this is the best champion theme in all of Pokemon. Like yeah, when you're facing Lance, it's amazing, but it's a next level and otherworldly when you're taking on Red.
It's transcendent when you're fighting Red. That is still the coolest moment in all of Pokemon. Like, bar none. Just, and I wish they kind of tried to recreate that by putting Red and Blue in the battle tree in Sun and Moon, but it wasn't the same.
No. Maybe
one day we'll get something like that again. Who knows? But for tracks on the cutting room floor, once again, we both have 2, so hit me with yours.
Yeah, I think the cave theme is something special in this game. So it goes by different names. I generally like seeing it referred to as Ice Path. Because this is also the theme for Dark Cave, as well as the Slowpoke Well, composed by Junichi Masuda. For Ice Path in particular, it makes me think of, you're at this step before the final gym town of Blackthorn. And you're pushing those blocks, you're sliding on the ice with those puzzles. This is like such a dark, chill groove to it. Starting with the low bass notes and then like these kind of like arpeggios, and then the melody comes in. It's such a great foundation and template for a remix, and so many of them do so well. I really, really like the song whenever I hear it. It's good vibes.
I agree. It's very cavey. This is probably the cave theme I think about the most, more than anything.
Absolutely. And then for my second, I'll throw out Yusin's theme. Hey, here's Morikazu Aoki.
We got one.
It's really, there aren't too many Crystal exclusive songs on this list. And it may sound like there's a little more stereo panning going on with this one. I don't know if that's just the difference on how soundtracks were ripped or whatever. But I love this theme so much, and just its bouncy energy for this new character, that I used it for a podcast opening theme once, particularly the Heart Gold Soul Silver version.
Right, I remember that.
But yeah.
Yeah, I remember that now.
Yeah, so Yusin's theme is a special one. I like it a whole lot.
It's a very, very catchy tune, and I think at the point when I decided, like, nah, this is just going to end up being Gen 2, because there's not a lot of Crystal exclusive songs on this list, but that's mainly because there's not a lot of Crystal exclusive songs in the game. There's like this, there's the Suicune battle theme, which is very good, and there's Ruins of Alph, I think, and that's basically it as far as I'm aware. For me, my two songs on the cutting room floor. First one is Game Corner. It is also the theme for the Lucky channel on the radio, which is good. It meant that I, as a kid, again, could just turn on the song and set the Game Boy down and listen to it. Man, I must have had my father pay so much money for AA batteries back then. Wow. This is just hitting me suddenly. This was composed by Go Ichinose. And there's not much to this song, but it always stuck out to me as one of those, like, man, I really like listening to this song on loop songs.
This song is a bop, and if this were not here, it would have been a crime.
Mm-hmm. It's so catchy. Like, it's very simple, but it's just so catchy. I miss the Game Corner. Damn you, Europe. Damn you. I should probably explain that. I can't just say damn you, Europe, and not explain that. The Game Corners no longer show up in Pokemon games. They stopped after Heart Gold and Soul Silver because of European Union laws about depicting gambling in video games. And I guess Game Freak just decided it was less trouble to just stop putting them in the games than to deal with that at all. And I can't blame them, but I do miss the Game Corner.
I miss buying an Abra from the Game Corner, leveling him up 6 levels to level 16, and then Kadabra running shop on that mid-game.
And my other cutting room floor track is Ekritique City. Also the theme for Cyanwood City, composed by Go Ichinose. This is another one of my favorite towns in the game, I think, because like this theme especially just feels really peaceful. Ekritique aesthetically, I think, is my favorite town in the game. Like, it's super cool. It's a very spiritual, peaceful town where things don't tend to go wrong, except for that one time when things went really, really, really wrong. And I think this song really reflects that feeling of just a laid-back town of like really focused on ancestry, kind of. I think this is supposed to be Kyoto, maybe Osaka. I don't know which. Maybe Nara, actually, now that I think about it. I don't know. I'm talking out of my ass here.
I wonder, yeah, with the tower, it might be Kyoto. Maybe.
But what will I never forget about the game? This is one of the most important and foundational games of my childhood. I know a couple weeks ago we talked about Brawl being like one of the most foundational games of my life, and that still has that distinction. But in terms of like games that really made me who I am as a kid, Pokemon Crystal is probably up there 100%. Like I said, I try to replay it every year. Don't always finish it. In fact, I rarely finish it. I'm going to replay it again this year so that I have a team to take into Pokemon Stadium 2 for Smasterpieces. But, yeah, I don't know. I absolutely adore this game, and I will never forget it. It's going to be one of my favorite games of all time until I die, basically.
Yeah, Gen 2 is incredible. Pokemon Soul Silver in my top 5 favorite games of all time. And it's hard to deny the origins of where that came from. I feel like this Crystal specifically is a game I do play every couple of years, though I play it emulated with a high rate of speed, like 600% emulation. It's fun to listen to the audio, the soundtrack like that. It's a whole lot of fun. A lot of for the battles and whatnot. That's certainly a thing. But then that means like I can just use my knowledge about the game to breeze through it and become the Pokemon League champion like between 5 and 6 hours. Pretty fun to do that in one setting.
I've done the same. Last time I did that was a race with a friend where I just barely won. It was fun. It was a good time. I love this game.
So Gems, Crystal, Diamond Dogs, another great episode of Original Soundchat. Thank you so much for listening. That will do it for us this week. You can find me on Twitter at PeteSpeakeasy. Joe is over at the Dobaga. The video version of the show is on the Rhymes with Asia YouTube channel, also at rhymeswithasia.com, but it's that MP3 podcast version you want, hosted by Anonymous Dinosaur at anondino.squarespace.com. Find that MP3 podcast feed on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, podcast services around the globe, including Spotify. You can download those MP3s, listen to it in your car, on a run, at work, and we won't tell your boss that you're listening to conversations about great video game soundtracks. And then finally, when you're done listening, join us on social media over at Soundchat OST. Let us know how we're doing with these episodes and give us some feedback and tell us what you'd like us to cover on future episodes. Now, on that Spotify whole service, we have the podcast feed, but we also have a Spotify playlist. Whenever we talk about songs on this show and they're on Spotify, Joe goes and adds them to that massive Spotify video game music playlist. Any additions this week?
So Pokemon, unsurprisingly, is not on Spotify at all, which is still kind of surprising to me considering it's all on Apple Music.
Right?
There must be some sort of contract there or something. But surprisingly, Phantom Pain is. Ground Zeroes and Phantom Pain are the only 2 songs in the Metal Gear franchise that are on Spotify.
Yeah. Wow. That's excellent. Good to get some Metal Gear music on there, even if it's only those couple of games. And then, yeah, we'll have more content rolling out to you here. Looking forward to making more, especially that best of 2018 list that we are hard at work on. Joe, who are we talking about next week?
I'll be talking about Kinuyo Yamashita.
Interesting. I will be talking about Hiroshi Yamaguchi. We've mentioned that name on a podcast or two before. Should be interesting to see what games we're talking about. Joe, let's play us out.
So, again, our traditions like to highlight a fan cover or remix. And when we talk about a Pokemon game, the choice is always to highlight the unfortunately now defunct Poke Remix Studio YouTube channel. In this case, I want to highlight his remix, the second remix of The Game Corner. It's one of my favorites that he's ever done. It's definitely my favorite of his Gen 2 remixes, so please enjoy that.
Some great piano before he goes into the electronic drops. Just love Poke Remix Studio. Thank you so much for listening to us this week on Original Soundchat. We'll see you next time. Take care.